The scream didn't echo, it cracked through the air like broken glass. Blood streaked the walls, still wet. Lila stood frozen at the edge of the hallway, her flashlight trembling in her grip. The others, Mason, Juno, and Dex, spun around, hearts in throats, as the heavy iron door behind them slammed shut on its own. "No one's here," Mason whispered, but the look in his eyes betrayed him. The asylum wasn't abandoned. Something had been watching, waiting. Juno's phone flickered, showing static. Dex kicked open a side door and gasped. Rows of patient beds, untouched for years, now had impressions, as if someone had just gotten up. Lila took a step back and nearly tripped over a doll missing an eye. It hadn't been there before. "We shouldn't be here," she breathed. Then, from deep inside the corridor, a second scream. This time, it sounded like Mason's name. The asylum was supposed to be sealed, chained off, condemned, forgotten. But the fence had a section bent wide, like something had clawed its way out, or in. Earlier that night, they'd laughed. Juno had dared them all with a grin. Let's see if the ghosts want company. Dex had brought bolt cutters, Mason brought a voice recorder, and Lila, well, she didn't want to come. She said the place made her stomach turn. Now they were inside, and the silence was the loudest thing in the world. They walked carefully, past broken wheelchairs, rusted A4 stands, and old patient files strewn across the floor like a storm had passed through. Lila said, "Why are all the beds made?" Mason didn't answer. He was recording. Juno giggled nervously. The sound bounced back to them from every corner, twisted, warped. It didn't sound like her anymore. The first floor was a maze of decay. Peeling paint hung like skin from the walls, and every step echoed too far, as if something was listening. Lila kept close to Mason, who was too focused on his recorder to notice her trembling. Juno skipped ahead, humming, mocking the silence, but it cracked halfway like she choked on it. They passed the old nurse's station. A coffee cup still sat on the desk, full, as if someone had just left. "How long has this place really been shut down?" Dex muttered. Lila spotted a shadow move near the elevator. She gasped and pointed, but when the group turned, there was nothing. "Probably rats," Mason said. But the shape she saw had shoulders and eyes. The elevator suddenly buzzed. All four froze. It was still powered. The lights above it flickered on, then off, then on again. The metal doors groaned and opened slightly, revealing darkness inside, and a faint sound. Breathing. "That's not possible," Dex whispered. Lila's hand clutched his. Juno stepped toward it, her face unreadable. "If it's haunted, maybe it wants us to see something." She smiled, but her voice was wrong. Mason aimed the recorder and said, "Who's there?" The elevator groaned. Then a voice, not theirs, answered from the recorder. "Welcome back." They should have run. But curiosity is a cruel thing. The elevator opened fully with a screech that echoed through the bones. Inside, the walls were smeared with fingerprints. Not handprints, fingertips. Lila stepped back, tears in her eyes. "Nope, we're done." But Juno didn't move. She tilted her head, eyes locked on something none of them saw. "It remembers me," she whispered. "I used to dream about this." Mason reached for her, but she stepped inside. The elevator lights flickered violently. "Juno!" Dex yelled. Then the doors slammed shut. Her scream was the last sound they heard, for now. Juno's scream was gone. Just silence. Cold, choking silence. The three of them stared at the sealed elevator doors, unmoving, hoping maybe, just maybe, it would open again. But nothing. Lila's hands trembled as she pounded on the panel. "Juno, say something." But the only sound was her own desperation. Dex slammed his shoulder against the doors. "We have to pry it open." Mason didn't speak. He just kept listening to the recorder. It was still running, and now it was playing something. Juno's voice, but she wasn't screaming anymore. She was singing. A lullaby. Off-key. Like a child. Lila whispered. She never sang that before. And then the last line, soft, mechanical, played. Sleep now, she's here. Mason turned pale. The recorder turned off by itself. They fled. Down the corridor, into deeper rot. Lila sobbed as she ran, her flashlight bouncing wild shadows against the walls. Old patient names still clung to rusted placards outside rooms. Dex kicked open another door, revealing a room frozen in time, walls covered with children's drawings. Smiling stick figures. Rainbows. But in the center, a drawing of a girl alone in an elevator, scribbled over with black. These weren't here before, Mason muttered. Lila stepped inside, drawn to a picture of a red-haired child holding hands with someone faceless. That looks like Juno, she whispered. Then the lights in the hallway cut out. Pure darkness swallowed the room. Someone, something, breathed behind them. The darkness was total. Breaths fast. Floor creaking. Dex swung his flashlight, and it sparked, then died. I saw someone, Lila gasped, voice quivering. Someone just stood there. Mason clicked his recorder back on. We need proof. Record everything. As the static kicked in, the air grew colder. A child's laughter, faint, echoed in the room. No, Lila said, clutching her arms. That's not real. That's not real. But then, a voice whispered from the corner. Soft, female familiar. Lila, come play. It was Juno's voice. But it came from the wrong direction. Dex spun around, and the flashlight sparked back on just in time to catch a silhouette sliding behind a cracked mirror. Gone in a blink. They locked themselves inside the room, barricading the door with a metal cabinet. Mason whispered, We need to regroup. Think. But Lila shook her head, her voice hollow. She called my name. I think she knows me. Dex paced, trying to get signal on his phone. Nothing. Then, Mason froze. Wait, these drawings? They're in layers. He peeled one off the wall, revealing another beneath. And another. Hundreds, maybe thousands, crayon drawings stacked one over another, some in different styles, different hands, different decades. Until they reached the base layer, old paper, yellowed and brittle. It showed 4 teenagers, standing in front of the asylum. One of them was Juno. One of them looked exactly like Lila. Lila stepped back from the wall, shaking her head. That's impossible. That's not me. But it was her. Same eyes, same necklace she wore now. What does it mean? Dex asked. No one had answers. The air in the room shifted. Warmer now, almost too warm. Then a whisper. You came back. It was in the walls. In the floor. A handprint burned onto the nearest tile, flesh-toned, human, but upside down. Mason dropped the recorder. It started playing again, unprompted, distorted crying. Then Lila's own voice, though she hadn't spoken. Let me out, it begged. Please, before she finds you. Lila collapsed to her knees, eyes wide, hands to her ears. Who's she? Dex shouted. But Lila couldn't hear him. Her own voice inside the recorder had just answered, Mother. The group left the barricaded room, each step heavier than the last. Lila clutched her necklace as if it could shield her from the asylum's creeping madness. Mason was silent, eyes flicking constantly to his recorder, replaying the word, Mother. Dex scanned the halls for any sign of Juno or escape. Suddenly, the overhead lights buzzed and flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows on peeling walls. A figure appeared at the end of the corridor, tall, thin, wearing a tattered nurse's uniform, her face pale and cracked like porcelain. You shouldn't be here, she whispered, voice like dry leaves. The floor beneath them creaked ominously, and Juno's laughter echoed, twisted and distant. Caretaker's grandson? No, something far worse. Mason tried to speak, but the nurse's figure vanished like smoke in the wind. A sudden chill swept the hall, freezing their breath. The voice recorder crackled back to life, playing snippets of frantic screams and whispered warnings. She's watching. She knows. Lila's knees buckled. The memories she'd tried to forget surged forward. The time she'd visited this asylum as a child with her mother, only to be pulled away screaming. Dex pulled her up, eyes scanning for cameras or any sign they were being watched from beyond the veil. The asylum had become a trap. Their only hope was to find the truth hidden in its darkest corners, before it found them. They stumbled into what used to be the therapy wing, walls lined with torn portraits of former patients. One painting caught Lila's eye, a faded photo of a young girl with the same red hair as Juno, sitting in an old wheelchair. The plaque beneath read, "Juno Marshall, admitted 1983, disappeared 1987. Mason's voice trembled as he read aloud, "Missing, presumed dead." Lila's heart pounded. Juno wasn't just a friend. She was part of the asylum's history, a secret buried beneath layers of dust and lies. Suddenly, a cold hand brushed Lila's shoulder. She whipped around, nothing but darkness stared back. As they pressed deeper, the temperature plummeted. Their breaths came out in frosty clouds. Mason pulled out a crumpled journal from his backpack, an asylum nurse's diary dated decades ago. "Listen to this," he said, voice low. Patients speak of a shadow called Mother, an entity feeding on fear and sorrow. She traps souls inside these walls. No one who enters leaves unchanged. Lila swallowed hard. That Mother was more than a ghost. She was a nightmare, a force anchored by pain. The diary's pages trembled in Mason's hands as if touched by an unseen breath. The air filled with soft humming, the asylum's song. It was calling. Juno's laughter returned, louder, closer. The walls seemed to breathe with it. The trio's flashlights flickered violently as a hidden door creaked open, revealing a stairwell descending into blackness. "We have to go down," Dex said, voice steady but strained. "If Juno's trapped, she's below." Mason hesitated but nodded. Lila swallowed her fear and stepped forward. The stairs groaned under their weight, the air thick with sorrow and secrets. Each step deeper was a descent into madness, a place where the past and present blurred. And at the bottom, whatever waited wasn't ready to forgive or forget. The stairwell ended in a damp, pitch-black basement corridor, the air thick with mold, and something far older, decay and despair. Dex flicked on his lighter, the small flame revealing faded, cryptic symbols scrawled on the walls in blood-red paint. Mason's hands shook as he pulled out a torn photograph. A family portrait, decades old. The woman in the center had the same cold eyes as the nurse ghost upstairs. Lila gasped, her breath caught in her throat. The woman wasn't just a ghost. She was their mother, their captor. And the basement held the asylum's darkest secret, one they weren't meant to find. The group pushed forward, the oppressive silence broken only by their footsteps and distant dripping water. Mason's voice trembled as he read from the diary again. "Mother binds us here. The lost children's souls feed her strength. Escape is an illusion." Lila's heart hammered. "Is Juno one of those lost souls?" Dex whispered. The corridor opened into a large chamber, walls lined with old hospital beds, each covered in faded, shredded blankets. In the center, a rusted metal cage. Inside, the faint sound of breathing. "She's trapped," Lila said. "We have to free her." As they approached, the cage door creaked open by itself. Inside was Juno, pale, gaunt, her red hair tangled and matted, eyes hollow but burning with fury. "You came back," she rasped. "But she's waiting." Before they could react, the chamber lights exploded, plunging them into chaos. Screams echoed all around, twisted, anguished, endless. Shadows peeled off the walls and lunged. Mason grabbed Lila's arm, shouting, "Run!" But the floor beneath shattered, plunging them into icy black water. Panic swallowed them whole. The asylum's grasp was tightening, and escape was slipping farther away. They surfaced gasping in a flooded basement chamber, water up to their chests, cold as death. Juno clung to Lila, whispering, She's the asylum. The mother is everywhere. Mason pointed to a narrow tunnel leading upward. This has to be the way out. Dex swam toward it, but as he reached the tunnel entrance, monstrous hands burst from the water, grabbing his ankle. He screamed, thrashing wildly as unseen forces dragged him back. Lila and Mason reached for him, but the darkness swallowed his cries. The asylum was alive, hungry, and it wasn't done with them yet. Lila and Mason scrambled through the tunnel, coughing on the stale air as they climbed. Behind them, the sounds of struggle faded into haunting silence. At last they burst out into a hidden courtyard, overgrown with weeds, moonlight spilling cold on the cracked ground. Lila collapsed onto the dirt, breath ragged. "We have to come back for Dex," she said fiercely. Mason nodded, voice steady, but eyes hollow. "No one leaves here without paying the price." The asylum's secrets were darker and deeper than they imagined. And Mother was just the beginning. Lila and Mason barely caught their breath before a cold wind swept through the courtyard. The rusted gates slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang. "It's not over," Mason said grimly. Lila's eyes scanned the shadows, searching for Dex or any sign of escape. Then from the darkness a chilling whisper floated through the air. "You belong to me now." The ground beneath their feet trembled as unseen hands clawed from below. A spectral figure emerged, Mother herself, towering and terrifying, eyes glowing with ancient hatred. "Your souls are mine," she hissed. The night erupted into chaos. Survival was no longer an option. Resistance was their only choice. Lila grabbed Mason's hand and ran toward the asylum's main entrance. The spectral mother's voice echoed, "You cannot hide." Behind them, shadowy tendrils stretched across the courtyard, trying to ensnare their ankles. Mason tripped, but Lila pulled him up. "Keep moving," she shouted. Inside the asylum, the halls twisted unnaturally, bending and folding as if alive. Doors led nowhere, windows showed endless darkness. Their flashlights flickered, powerless against the overwhelming presence. Every corner seemed to breathe with malicious intent. The asylum was punishing them, for trespassing, for defying it. And it wasn't finished yet. Mason's recorder crackled again, but now the voice was clearer. Juno's voice, desperate and pleading. "Help me. Free me." Lila followed the sound to a hidden chapel deep inside the asylum, its stained glass windows shattered and pews coated in dust. In the center lay an altar with chains draped over it. Fresh blood streaked across the stone. Juno's spirit flickered faintly near the altar, tethered but defiant. "Mother trapped me here," she whispered. "Break the chains or be trapped like me." Mason looked to Lila, determination replacing fear. This was their chance to end it. But breaking those chains would come with a price, a sacrifice none of them expected. Lila reached for the chains, her hands trembling as cold whispers filled the room. "You cannot undo what Mother has bound," the voice warned. As she pulled, shadows surged, reaching for her like living smoke. Mason held the recorder aloft, chanting fragments from the diary, hoping to weaken the curse. The chains rattled violently, sparks flying. Then silence, an unbearable, suffocating void. Suddenly, a violent scream tore through the asylum, shaking its walls. The chains fell to the floor, shattered. Juno's spirit lifted, free but fading fast. "Run," she begged, "before Mother comes for you." They fled the chapel, racing through collapsing halls as Mother's rage echoed behind them. The asylum trembled, walls crumbling, floors cracking open beneath their feet. Just as they reached the front doors, Mason looked back, his eyes wide with horror. Dex's pale face appeared in a broken window, frozen, lips moving in silent scream. The doors slammed shut, sealing their escape, but leaving a piece of their souls behind. Outside, the night was eerily calm. Lila gasped for air, clutching her necklace. Mason whispered, "We survived, but the asylum never forgets." Somewhere in the darkness a whisper, "I will be waiting." Outside, the cold night air bit into their skin, but the terror clung tighter. Lila and Mason stumbled into a clearing, surrounded by dead trees, silence pressing down like a weight. Mason's voice cracked. "We lost Dex." Lila shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "No, he's still here. Somewhere." The asylum's grip didn't end at the walls. It followed them, threading through their minds. Mason pulled out the recorder, but it was silent, empty, as if the asylum had swallowed the last echoes. "We escaped the building, but not the nightmare," Lila whispered. Somewhere behind the trees, a soft, familiar giggle. The chase wasn't over. Days passed, but sleep brought no peace. Lila's dreams were invaded by shadowy figures and distant screams. Mason obsessively played the recorder, searching for lost clues. They both felt watched, eyes in every shadow, whispers curling in every corner. Then, a message scrawled on Mason's bedroom wall in blood-red paint. "She's not done." Panic tightened their chests. They realized the asylum was more than a place. It was a curse, a presence that followed, waiting to consume. "We have to go back," Mason said quietly, "to finish what we started." Returning to the asylum was like stepping into a waking nightmare. The gates creaked open as if expecting them, the air thick with malevolence. Inside, the halls seemed even darker, whispers bleeding from the walls. Lila led the way, clutching her necklace tightly. Mason's recorder buzzed uncontrollably, voices overlapping in a terrifying chorus. "Welcome back, to the beginning." The past and present merged, and the asylum breathed life into every shadow. They weren't just trespassers, they were prisoners of a never-ending cycle. Deep inside the asylum's bowels, they found a room lined with mirrors, cracked, fogged, and stained. Their reflections were wrong, distorted, twisted versions staring back. A voice echoed through the chamber. "You cannot leave what you carry inside." Lila dropped to her knees, seeing herself reflected as something broken and haunted. Mason's eyes welled with tears. The asylum wasn't just a place. It was a prison of memories, fears, and secrets. To escape, they had to confront what Mother had buried in their souls. Only then could they hope for freedom. In the darkest moment, Lila whispered a name, her mother's. A flood of memories crashed over her, childhood visits, whispered warnings, broken promises. Mason joined her, voice steady as he repeated a phrase from the diary. "Release the pain, release the soul." The mirrors shattered, and the chamber flooded with blinding light. When it faded, the asylum's grip loosened. They stood free, but changed. The nightmare would never leave them, not fully. But for now, they had survived. Outside, the first dawn light stretched over broken walls. Freedom was fragile, but it was theirs. The sun rose, casting weak light over the ruined asylum. One colored scalar. Lila and Mason stood outside the gate, exhausted but alive. Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncertain. As they turned to leave, a soft metallic clatter echoed behind. They looked back but saw nothing. On the cracked concrete lay an old battered doll, the same one Lila had almost tripped over on their first night inside. Its missing eye seemed to gleam in the morning light. Lila reached down, hesitating. "No." The doll's presence was a whisper, a warning. The asylum's shadow lingered, patient and waiting. Some stories never end. Some nightmares never fade. Back in their separate lives, shadows clung to their edges. Lila's apartment was colder, quieter. Nightmares twisted her sleep into waking terror. Mason's recorder lay broken on his desk, static still, whispering faint warnings. Neither spoke of the asylum again, but both knew it hadn't let them go. The line between past and present blurred, and the asylum's grip reached far beyond its crumbling walls. A message appeared on Lila's phone. No sender, just 3 words: "She waits still." The curse was far from over. Freedom was an illusion wrapped in silence. Mason drove through empty streets, the night thick with fog and memories. The asylum's whispers rode the wind, haunting the corners of his mind. At a red light, He glimpsed a shadowy figure in the rearview mirror. A woman with porcelain skin and cracked eyes. He blinked. Nothing. The radio flickered to static, then a soft, chilling lullaby. "Sleep now," it sang. Mason's knuckles whitened on the wheel. The past wasn't done with him. The asylum story was still unfolding. And somewhere deep inside, Mother smiled. Late one night, Lila dreamed she was back inside the asylum, wandering endless halls. The walls whispered her name. She reached a door marked Mother's Room. It creaked open slowly, revealing darkness deeper than night itself. From within came a whisper, cold and sharp. "You belong here." She woke, heart pounding, sweat soaking her sheets. The asylum had invaded her mind, threading its curse into her very soul. Escape was never real. It was a story they were trapped in, a story still being written. And the ending was yet to come. The final scene closes on the empty courtyard. The battered doll lies motionless on cracked concrete. A soft wind rolls in. The doll's missing eye twitches. A faint whisper drifts through the night. "I will be waiting." The camera pulls back slowly, revealing the asylum standing silent but alive, windows like watching eyes. The screen fades to black. Silence. Then a single breath. Then cut. The nightmare is not over. It never will be.